Hello, everyone. Jim Coyle with Indiana Sports Beat Radio alongside Coach Shannon Griffith coming to you from Memorial Stadium on this Thursday night in Bloomington as Indiana football had their spring game, the second under Kurt Cignetti as the Cignetti era reboot 2 gets underway. It was, it was a spring game. There's not a lot, but if you're watching it to try to see certain things, you could definitely see things. And we'll talk about a lot of those tonight. We'll start with the offense because that's where the questions probably are mainly. You've got so many new pieces and parts, but both sides of the ball too. But the defense they've got all-American anchors coming back on the line at linebacker in the defensive backfield. Offensively, they don't have any of that. Last time I checked, there were 0 All-Americans on that side. Not to say there won't be a few this year, but Fernando Mendoza, of course, was the first thing that we were all going to be looking at tonight, and he looked pretty smooth for a spring game. It's not like he's just off the truck here. He's played. This is his third college football season. He's already thrown for 5,000 career yards, but he looked smooth. He looked deliberate. His passes were crisp. The one pick six that went back, that was a tip ball. So that's not really, I don't know. It could have been a bad pass. I don't remember. But anyway, he looked pretty good. He had to throw for over 100 yards, I would have think tonight, at least. So a lot of positives. Yeah. The running backs, man, Kalen Black with that burst up the middle at 45-yard run. He looked like he was shot out of a cannon. Beebe, he made some great plays, showed both he and Roman Hemby showed that they could also not only run the ball and make great plays, but be a weapon out of the backfield catching the ball. Makes some great plays. Omar Cooper, 2 touchdown receptions on the night as well. So, and more importantly, probably to me, the offensive line looked snappy. They look good. They're playing against a top-tier defense, and they didn't get their ass handed to them, to be honest with you. They played pretty well.
Yeah, if you start from the up front out, I think you would say that the offensive line, again, continuing to make great strides. It's hard to say this, but I do think they are going to be one of the strengths of this football team when it's all said and done. Heading into August and starting the games, I do think they are going to be a huge positive. Credit to Coach Bobstead on what he's done there. The running back room, I don't think is going to take a step back at all. I do think that they've got 3 capable running backs. Black, who has just kind of waited his turn.
Biding my time.
Yeah, he's bided his time, and it's now his opportunity. He will not let it go by. And then, of course, BB and Hemby add that experience, toughness as well to the room. As you said, the back coming out of the backfield to receive it as a positive. Wide receiver. Now, we didn't have Elijah Surratt tonight, and I think that was noticeable some.
But it's also a good thing for the offense to look as good, as sharp as they did, and not have maybe your most important weapon through the air out there.
Yeah. Charlie Becker, I think, will be a guy that they can depend upon on being a depth guy for them.
we're going to go a 3-2-1. I'm going to have to go home and edit all of this crap tonight. More work. Do you know where you were?
We were talking about the offenses, and you were talking about Sig answer to your question about explosiveness and
On the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah. And we were talking about the effectiveness of all three quarterbacks. And you think about the quarterback room as a whole, you got two guys in there that have played a significant amount of snaps at the D1 level with Fernando and Wilson. The only one that hasn't played probably as many as Alberto. So it is an experienced room as it pertains to not only just age, but as well as playing. So that's the key component there. And then outside, you can, EJ Williams, like we said, you don't want to get too excited about EJ because it always seems in the past he's let you down because he's one of those guys that's injury prone. If they can keep him around and healthy, he will be a dominant factor for them because it'll be tough to defend him because he's not only tall, but he's got speed.
Speed kills, baby, and you can't coach speed, and you can't catch it either.
No.
Defensively, there's not a lot to talk about, but that's only because it is so hard to see who's standing out on defense, especially when you're kind of focusing on the offense and offensive players, which we were for the large part. But you were able to look over some of the defensive lineups and who did what, who impressed you, who kind of showed out.
Well, I think Jones flashed for me, their inside linebacker, Isaiah Jones. And I thought he made a lot of different types of plays. Now he's a kid that played for him a lot last year. He wasn't a guy that was lining up in a starting position, but he played significant amount of snaps for them, especially in the second half of the year. And he looked really good tonight, especially at a position where Aiden Fisher, again, he wasn't out there tonight. So it was good to see another inside linebacker stepping up and making those plays that you're accustomed to seeing a Fisher or a Walker make. And I think he did that very well. Secondary, I like where they're at with the secondary. I know we talked with Brian a little bit there after the game, and he was, he's never going to be satisfied. That's like Sig. They're never satisfied. That's their mentality. But overall, I thought defensively, boy, I think they're going to be able to take off right where they left off. And that was a pretty darn good defense last year. I still think they've got a defense that can be really good. Now, will they go portal shopping? You bet. They're going to try to find those one or two gems that may be still out there, either on offense or defense. So you can guarantee that they're going to have their eyes open. Because if that's something like CJ West falls in your lap, you're going to take him. So you're not going to not take him. So
he's not talking about one of these gyms. Let me tell you, portal opens in a week, Wednesday, on the 22nd.
Yeah. There's a lot of guys already in it. It's the craziest thing.
It's shopping time. Blue light special. Basketball portal about to close, but the guys are still in that portal. So that crosses over to the football portal being open.
Right.
So we're going to have all kinds of stuff going anywhere with Indiana basketball still in the middle of filling out their roster, although they've been killing it here of late. They got a lot of spots to fill yet. They've got to go big shopping. So I don't know if they'll go out shopping together or not. I doubt it, but no, I'm just kidding. But yeah, there's no doubt, but it's a lot easier for an Indiana or Brian Haynes to go get what he needs to get now. For a couple of reasons. The house settlement is about to happen. That's going to pump more NIL or more money. I shouldn't call it NIL money. It's rev share money. More money into the Indiana football program. But Indiana has earned the respect of players around the country, kids around the country, coaches around the country. They're legit. You had a top 5 defense at times last year. A team that made the college football playoffs and one that is very possibly going to make it back. If the defense is can be as strong as it was last year, I think that Indiana can make it back to the college football playoffs. But the defense is going to be the question to me, not the offense. I think the offense is going to come around. The line looked a lot better tonight. They looked sure themselves. They looked confident when they needed to move the pile. It seemed like the pile moved. When they needed to. There was a 4th and 1. Actually, Alberto threw a nice pass on that play. So but there was another fourth down play, but they moved the pile. And this is against the first team defense. So they're not playing against me and Coach Shannon here.
Right.
So
yeah, they got good push.
And they're going to get better as long as they stay healthy. That is the key. It's always the key for everybody. They've already been hit with one kind of significant injury. I was like, man, I almost wouldn't tackle in this spring game if it was me, just to squeeze off till fall. But now they'll go off and they'll get there healthily, and the guys that aren't quite healthy get healthy, and they'll have them back hopefully, and then fall rolls around, and then they're going to get serious. But also by then, we'll know who they have gotten to fill in these spots. It could be, if they get the right guys, you're talking about this team doing. I think they're going to be a better team this year than they were last year, like I have said, if they can get those couple of guys picked up on the defensive side. Offense, I have confidence in the offense right now.
Well, offensive wise, you didn't have Drew Evans tonight. He sat out with a little banged up, as well as Khalil Benson. So those two guys weren't out there tonight, and you didn't really miss them. I don't want to mean that in a negative way.
That says a lot.
It wasn't something like, man, we missing two of our guys. And I don't think we've said that around here with an Indiana program in quite a while. When you miss some guys that you're counting on. So, I mean, up front, yes, they got what they need up there to be as good up front as they were a year ago and have consistency in moving the football. And I do think it's, Coach Bobstead's also in his third year, and you can tell he's in his third year because he's had these guys now for 2 or 3 years, and they're accustomed to his coaching, and he's accustomed to the offense now. So he knows what needs to be taught and how it needs to be taught in order for them to be successful, either running it or throwing it. There's no question about that. And again, defensively speaking, I think they're going to be really good in the secondary. I do think they're going to have the ability to really cause some teams that like to throw the football problems. Again, it does come down to, can they get a consistent enough rush and pressure on
line, guys?
Pressure on the quarterback, because you can't just sit back and blitz all the time. But I do think as a whole, if you look at this team from a whole right now from last year's standpoint, there's no question, and they've upgraded themselves in a lot of different ways, either through maturity, guys, being in the program and they've elevated their play, and some of the guys that have been able to come in because of, like you said, they see what Indiana's doing. Now, they go out in the portal, they may be able to attract some of these top guys, like the gentleman out of Georgia who's a wide receiver that's a Indiana kid from up in Northwood, Indiana. And he's a wide receiver that could ultimately end up here just because of the fact that Indiana's got that projected big time top tier Big Ten team that these kids look forward to. And they had a big group of kids here on campus tonight, and some portal guys.
And and I asked Aiden Fisher about having this offense that has been tuned up, revamped the offensive line. Fernando is. I don't want to say that he's better than Curtis Rourke, because Curtis Rourke was spectacular, but much more mobile. And now again, Curtis played with a dang on torn ACL, and he just got the snot beat out of him sometimes, but there's some mobility there. You hopefully he doesn't have to run, because you've got a great line with great running backs, great receivers. If your quarterback doesn't have to run, it's much more preferable, because that's you can get hurt out there, man.
Yeah, you got 3 good runners.
A lot of gators. It's like running through a swamp with gators, full of gators.
Well, the biggest thing there is being able to implement some throwing on the move. Some of your naked bootlegs and things of that nature, or sprint out passes where you're changing the launch point. You're just not always dropping straight back. All those things help an offensive line, because if the defense knows where you're going to throw it from, they can pin their ears back and come at you. And that's what happened last year when Curtis was able to move as well because of his injury to his knee. Now with Fernando, Even Alberto, for that matter.
They're almost interchangeable.
Yeah.
Not quite yet, but almost.
They can do some of those things that maybe even Curtis wouldn't even be able to do, or they would not have even thought of doing with him even last year healthy. But I think you got Fernando is kind of sneaky quick and almost sneaky fast in some respects, and Alberto athletically he's probably the most athletic of them all. But I think it's a good group of quarterbacks that from a quarterback's perspective, a guy I coached the position for a number of years, I'd be excited to walk in that room every day.
That quarterback room is much deeper than it was last year.
Yeah.
It is much better. Like I said, you don't want your number one guy going down, of course. But if Alberto had to come in, and I hate to judge something off of a spring game because you're not really playing a game, but he looked pretty confident as well. Like I said, Wilson, the same thing, fearless. And this is in spring. They're just going to keep sharpening that tool as they get along. But fun stuff to watch. Weather held off. No rain, no bad weather. So can't complain. Hope everyone has a happy Easter. But we're not done. We'll kick it back to the Hard Truth Distilling Company studios as we're bringing you the Hard Truth Indiana football postgame show here tonight from Memorial Stadium. We'll also see you back on the radio. For Shannon, Coach Griff, I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.